Picture this. You're standing in the absolute breathtaking emptiness of the ancient Arabian desert. The sun is just starting to set, right? It's casting this gorgeous golden light and these deep, dark bronze shadows across endless dunes. You can hear the wind howling past black tents. In this harsh, beautiful, but completely unforgiving landscape, your survival doesn't depend on towering stone walls, rich kings, or sprawling empires. Out here, your life depends entirely on just three things: your tribe, your loyalty, and your honor. Welcome to our explainer on the pre-Islamic Bedouin code and social structure, inspired by Philip K. Hitti's monumental History of the Arabs. We're going to explore the raw, intensely emotional, and deeply philosophical framework that kept human beings alive in what is literally one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Okay, let's dive right into this. Because to understand the Bedouin, we first really need to understand the creature that made their whole existence possible. The scholar Alois Springer famously called the Bedouin the parasite of the camel. Now, I know that sounds a bit harsh, doesn't it? But actually, it's not an insult at all. It's just a profound biological and economic reality. The Bedouin literally referred to themselves as the people of the camel. This animal was their absolute lifeblood. It gave them their milk, their meat, their transport, even the hair for their tents. In desperate times, a camel's paunch was even a vital source of water. They even had around 1,000 different names in Arabic just for the camel in its various breeds and stages of growth. That's how crucial it was. The camel allowed the Bedouin to master the desert, giving them a level of mobility that settled people simply could not match. But of course, the camel alone wasn't enough. Which brings us to our first core concept. Section 1, the desert and the clan, the fundamental foundation of life out here. Against the scorching heat and trackless dunes, individual isolation meant certain death. Let's see how the society actually builds itself to prevent that, because it's brilliant. Think of it like a massive survival puzzle based purely on strict blood relationships, whether real or in some cases fictitious. It starts small, with a single tent, that's the family. You group a few of those tents together and you get an encampment. The members of that encampment make up a kaum, or a clan. And finally, when you group a number of kindred clans together, you get the qabila, the tribe. Blood was the absolute glue here. While your tent and your stuff were private property, the water, the pasture, and the survival of the whole group, that was entirely communal. And because of that intense structure, you get this terrifying reality. In a land where the words stranger and enemy basically meant the exact same thing, there was absolutely no worse calamity than losing your tribe. A tribeless man was an outlaw, a tard. If a guy committed a murder inside his own clan, nobody would step up to defend him. He became a total outcast, forced to wander alone into the literal and metaphorical sandstorm, completely beyond the pale of any protection. Without a tribe, you didn't just lose your family, you simply ceased to exist. So, with such a tight-knit, high-stakes group, how on earth were they governed? That brings us to Section 2, the sheikh, the born democrat. Keep in mind, we are far away from the settled civilizations of kings and emperors. Out here in the sand, the clan is represented by its titular head, the sheikh. But here's the catch. The sheikh isn't a monarch. He doesn't have absolute authority. He can't just snap his fingers and make a decree. Instead, he's more the respected elder, chosen for his age and his personal qualifications. His leadership comes from offering sober counsel, extreme generosity, and undeniable personal courage. In matters of justice or war, he actually has to sit down and consult with the tribal council, the heads of the families. His job literally only lasts as long as he maintains the goodwill of his people. Which creates this truly fascinating social dynamic. The Bedouin is famously described as a born democrat, standing on equal footing with his sheikh. But at the same time, he is fiercely aristocratic. Every single Bedouin views himself as the absolute pinnacle of creation. He takes immense, almost unimaginable pride in his nasab, his noble ancestry, tracing his lineage back through genealogies they memorized prodigiously. To him, the civilized guy living comfortably in a settled town, totally inferior. True nobility was measured by purity of blood, eloquence in poetry, and mastery of the sword and horse. Now, if blood is the physical structure, what exactly is the psychological glue? Section 3, asabiyah, the spirit of the clan. Asabiyah is what holds everything together against the unforgiving elements. It translates roughly to the spirit of the clan, but really it is this boundless, completely unconditional loyalty to your fellow clansmen. It's a passionate, almost chauvinistic patriotism where your individual identity completely dissolves and merges right into the collective survival of the group. The clan is an absolute, self-sufficient unit. Concepts of right or wrong didn't even matter in the way we think of them today. If your clan was in trouble, you stood by them. No questions asked, period. Just to prove exactly how intense this tribal patriotism was, listen to this dramatic quote from an ancient bard. Be loyal to thy tribe. Its claim upon its members is strong enough to make a husband give up his wife. I mean, wow. The spirit of asabiyah literally superseded absolutely everything else. The survival of the collective was far, far more important than even the most intimate personal relationships. It was this fierce, emotional brotherhood forged entirely in the fire of necessity. And this society was governed by an incredibly strict ethical framework. Let's look at Section 4, murū'ah, the Bedouin Code of Honor. In the desert, abstract virtues were quite literally matters of life and death. This ethical framework was known as murū'ah, which was basically the pre-Islamic ideal of manliness and honor. Its core components were courage, loyalty, and a level of extreme generosity that's hard to even fathom today. And guess who kept track of who had murū'ah and who didn't? The poets. In ancient Arabia, poets were essentially the journalists, historians, and public relations agents of their day. They committed tribal achievements to memory, spreading stories of heroic deeds, and totally roasting rival tribes across the desert campfires. Now, what's really interesting here is this crazy paradox at the heart of the Bedouin character. On the one hand, you have Ghazwa, the desert raid. This was essentially a national sport and a totally valid form of economic survival, taking livestock from weaker neighbors. It was considered a perfectly manly occupation. So a Bedouin could be a fierce land pirate during a raid, right? But then, on the other hand, you have diyafa, the sacred duty of hospitality. The very same guy who fiercely raided his neighbor's camp yesterday would unhesitatingly slaughter his absolute last camel to feed a wandering stranger today. Hospitality was the supreme virtue, practically the only thing mitigating the sheer harshness of desert life. Hatem al-Ta'i, a historical figure from the early 7th century, became the ultimate, absolute personification of this ideal. You have to remember, in a land with no inns or hotels, turning away a guest wasn't just rude. It was a direct offense against the established honor code and an offense against God himself. Sharing warmth around a fire, offering coffee and a meal to a complete stranger, that was a sacred duty. So, where did women fit into this world? That brings us to Section 5, the Bedouin woman. As we paint this picture of tribal councils and desert raids, the reality of gender dynamics might actually surprise you, especially when you compare it to the settled towns of that exact same era. Now, Bedouin society was definitely patriarchal. They lived in a polygamous system where the man was the master. But, and this is a big but, the Bedouin woman actually enjoyed a significant measure of freedom that was totally denied to her sedentary sisters in the cities. She was an active participant in camp life, she had a lot of mobility, and most notably, she retained the liberty to choose her own husband. Critically, she had the agency to leave him if she was ill-treated. For centuries upon centuries, this is just how life operated, but a massive transformation was coming. Section 6, Dawn of a New Era, From Clan to Faith. We need to zoom out microscopically for a second, because this isolated, fractured desert world was preparing for a shift that would literally alter the course of human history. The greatest shift occurred with the dawn of Islam. Just look at the contrast. For generations, society was totally fractured by tribal kinship. Yes, it kept them alive, but it also resulted in these endless multi-generational blood feuds. Like, there was an infamous 40-year conflict called the Bosas War that started over a wounded camel. Then, Islam arrived and radically replaced that blood relationship with a new bond, the bond of faith. It instituted a sort of Pax Islamica, an Islamic peace. It created a massively unified community where protection wasn't based on who your ancestors were, but on a shared belief. And this perfectly captures that monumental shift. What we are looking at are the grand mahamals, these incredibly splendid decorated litters that represented the massive Egyptian and Syrian caravans departing for Mecca. We've officially moved from isolated, localized desert camps constantly raiding each other to a globally connected, centralized faith. The incredible endurance, the unbreakable discipline, and that profound capacity for loyalty that the Bedouin forged in the harshness of the desert, all of that was suddenly united under a single unified banner. Which leaves us with this incredible, lingering question. How exactly did the uncompromising discipline, the profound asabiyah, and the intense loyalty of these isolated Bedouin tribes become the raw human material for one of the greatest empires in human history? The harsh desert didn't just teach these people how to survive, it forged the very foundation of a civilization that would soon sweep out of the sands and change the entire world. It's just a brilliant testament to the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring the deep history hidden within these sands.